Okay, I'm going to get started right away because I know we're crunched for time here. So good afternoon and welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Jen Judson, land warfare reporter for Defense News and past president of the National Press Club. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2014, the US and the Baltic states have grown in cooperation and support. Prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that is now entering its fourth year, the US, along with the rest of NATO, have worked together to bolster the region with things like enhanced forward presence battalions to each of the three Baltic states. I had the opportunity in 2019 to visit the one in Lithuania, and the feedback was that the units had significantly reduced the risk of military conflict in the region, but the Baltic states still sounded the alarm for increased support from the US and other European nations because of the clear and present danger countries in the region saw in Putin's aggression. At the same time, the Baltic states' leaders have worked hard to ensure Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are setting up infrastructure to better connect the rest of Europe, to shed themselves from historical dependence on Russian resources, and to ensure their defenses are robust enough to deter Russia's likely interest to expand its invasion beyond Ukraine. And while an outright Russian invasion has not occurred within the borders of the Baltic states, the countries have experienced a variety of hybrid warfare attacks coming from not only Russia, but also China. These include activities like disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, sabotage to things like underwater sea cables, and weaponized migration. Today, we're joined by three foreign ministers from the Baltic states. We have Baiba Braže of Latvia, Kęstutis I'm trying, of Lithuania, and Margus Tsahkna of Estonia. They're here in Washington, D.C. to contribute to the dialogue surrounding the new U.S. administration's strategic direction, where that might be going, and what that means for their countries. I know we hope to hear what they are learning. Before we begin what I know will be an insightful conversation, just a few housekeeping items. We've passed around blank question cards, so feel free to fill out those, pass them up. You can ask as many questions as you want. If you run out of cards, ask for more. And our staff member, Cecily, I think she might have stepped out of the room, but you can feel free. It's a small room. Just pass it up to me. That's fine if you don't see Cecily here. And please make sure to write legibly. I can't read what I can't make out, so please do your best and also try to keep your questions short. And before we begin, please also be sure to silence your cell phones. So now, with a warm welcome to our guests, the foreign ministers of the Baltic states, I'd like to kick off our discussion by asking, what have you learned so far on your trip here in the US as the Trump administration takes over for a second time in American history? What are some of the major takeaways you've had so far in your conversations here? And we can begin with Margus, since you're sitting right here next to me, and go down the line.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I had this opportunity last time to be here a year ago in March. And it is very important. And of course, our visit here is very important for us, actually, to have a sense what is going on, and lots is going on, actually, in DC and in US just after the elections. And be honest, this mandate, what was given to Trump's administration and also to Senate and Congress, this is very strong. And but we are living in a historical momentum. And one thing is obvious, if you ask me as well, our experience within the last couple of days says something will happen. Something definitely will happen. And our main topic, of course, is about the European security, about the Russian invasion to Ukraine. And also we deliver our understanding as frontliners for NATO and neighboring countries for Russia, that what can we do? And also we're asking the question, what can we as Europe do more to find a just, full and long-lasting peace? So, but I think that we have many opportunities, and I've said as well many times, and I've written as well the article last year, that we are in the year of 1938 in Europe, just before the Munich, when Chamberlain went home with a paper and said that now peace will be. But actually we all understand that what happened after, and we somehow having the same parallel in the world, and not only in Europe, that we have all the opportunities to avoid everything what came later after 1938. And I think that we have a strong position. Transatlantic bond is really strong, and we feel it during every meeting on whatever different people we are meeting on the Hill. And also we would like to deliver the message that we can and we must push Putin to the weaker position, and we must have a peace to strength. We can do the energy sanctions, we can use actually Russian frozen assets in Europe, more than 300 billion, and we must push Putin to change the goal. And the goal was not actually to gain some more territories in Ukraine, but the goal was actually to change the European security architecture, to push US out from Europe, and also to re-establish this buffer zone as Baltic states and Poland. It's about NATO, it's about where are the red lines are going. So, and I have this feeling that all together we can define a very strong position to finish this war, but we need to do the steps in the right order, and not to go to trap in the meaning Putin wants us to bring, you know, and this is why we're here.
Right. Baiba.
We're here to meet as many Americans as possible, so we've been spending a lot of time on the Hill, meeting both the Republican and the Democrat senators, representatives. We have listened to the think tankers and spoken to some business people, so it's great to be back in Washington. And we have felt very warmly welcome. The Baltic states are well known, not only because we are committed to 5% of defense spending in a foreseeable future, but also because of our communities here, because of, you know, relationships that we have had with the US throughout more than 100 years of our friendships, and that's what it is. It's good to be back among the friends.
All right.
Thank you, and really delighted to be here, and also to share with our American friends and colleagues how much in common we have, how our interests interconnected and are the same. And in this field, it's not only about the security, it's not only about the aligning our policies towards the aggressors, towards the dictatorships, be it China, be it Iran or other countries, but it's also where we create synergies in cooperating in energy field. We're also talking about how to expand it, because the Baltic countries, Lithuania specifically, imports more than 50%, for example, of its LNG from US, and we are ready to expand it more, and we urge our colleagues in Europe to do the same, and also cooperation in energy technologies, that is also important. And of course, cooperation in imposing more sanctions against Russia, as the energy resources still is the main source of hard currency for Russia, for its war machine, to keep aggression against Ukraine. So there are many topics for us, and also to present us as Baltic countries what we are, and we are the new model of the defense policies. So this is not only defense investments, but it's also the defense partnership with US. In our acquisition, that's more than 1/5 each year of our spending goes to US. And this also creates the opportunities for us to do more. This also puts the pressure on our allies and other European countries to do more, because we understand that those years of underspending in NATO created the gaps, and we are now covering those. It will take time, but we are in a very good direction. And of course, Ukraine. Ukraine is the main topic of our meetings of today, of yesterday, and we are, once again underlining that bringing strength to Ukraine, that's the number one precondition to get the good deal, to get the peace that would be long-standing, that would be sustainable, because that's our interest. We have to stop aggression, not only to get the peace in the form of the ceasefire or some truce. And to stop the aggression, we have to have the deterrence that is effective and that works against Russia. So there are many topics, and we, as the Baltic countries, have a lot of things to offer that we already did or we are ready to do.
Now, you mentioned that, for energy is the main currency for Russia. Let's talk about what you are about to do. You're about to cut off from Russian electric grid on February 8th, if that's still the correct date. What is the significance of this, and how important is Baltic Synchro, where you join the continental Europe electric transmission grid? Walk us through the process and any challenges that you may anticipate doing this. once
Well,
again?
the decision was made quite a while ago, so the preparations were both technical because you need to have alternative supply in place and disconnecting from a particular type of electricity grid. Of course, you know, there's a lot of engineering and very practical work involved, so all the testing had to be taking place among the three of us on a national level. All the risk assessments, the sort of alternative modes and models. So we are through that, and this Sunday we will have full energy independence from Russia, not only buying LNG from the US and not being dependent on the gas or oil or anything, but also off from the electricity grid. So that's what it is.
Okay.
And in a couple of decades, there was the huge progress, and we are the true example that you can make the energy independence happening. Lithuania or other Baltic countries, going a couple of decades back, were 100% dependent on natural gas imports, 100% dependent on crude oil imports, and also electricity. We were not dependent 100%, but we are still, like today, we're still in the same system that is run by Russian energy specialists. So what we did, so we built the LNG terminal, and we got the diversified supplies of the natural gas, and now it's zero. We were the first country in 22 to just cut off all the imports of the electricity, gas, and oil. So that was because we decided to build LNG terminal. We spent a lot of money, but it was worth it. Then with the oil, same. We built the oil terminal to import it because we didn't want to have it from Russia on the oil pipelines. And now electricity, the last stage. So what will happen this weekend? We will desynchronize from Russian system. We will connect into continental Europe. And when it will be successful, starting from the upcoming months, we will cut off physically the lines with Russia and Belarus. And this is for Russia, this is very also symbolic, because we are leaving their system that they thought that it was built for the decades and will remain there. They even built the nuclear power plant in Belarus just to keep us in the system. So now we are cutting it off and showing the example that you can achieve that. Because we still have voices in Europe that say that it's impossible. There are no substitutes. Yeah. There are substitutes. It takes time, it takes bit investment, and first of all, it takes political will to do this.
Yeah, and also we all need to travel back home to be ready, whatever Russia would do, because we have lots of disinformation around this 9th of February. We have as well the hybrid attacks, we can call them on all different levels. We never know which are connected to this desynchronization or not. Cyber attacks are, like we can say, 24/7 already normal. So, and also we have had the US assistance here on technical level. We have prepared it together, so we know that we are not alone. And as well as Kęstutis said, we have cut 100% now out from the Russian system as well. In beginning of the 22, Estonia was dependent on Russian gas like 87%. And we decided that we are cutting us off, and we now buy like more than 85% the US LNG. So, and also we have agreed politically in European Union that we are cutting us all out from the Russian gas like for the year 27, but we still see this kind of wishful thinking that maybe business as usual will turn back and so on. So this is one topic we advocate here as well in US, that US and President Trump has well this kind of political opportunity to encourage or to push Europe on the direction that we are not actually supporting Russian war machine anymore with the energy export. So there are like many aspects, but I totally agree. One is practical for us about this energy grid desynchronization from Russia, but this is a totally symbolic thing as well. So this is really something that Putin doesn't like. It's like there's 3 countries which are totally independent.
So you have to anticipate retaliation, of course. So can you talk a little bit more about what it is that you are watching out for, how you're preparing for that potential to happen?
We don't expect retaliation. We just expect the normalcy to continue, constant cyber 24/7 disinformation and everything. So what you do is you just test your systems, you do run tests, you prepare exercises, you know, you have the crisis mode on. That's, I think we can advise that to anyone. I mean, whether desynchronizing from Russia or not, I mean, that is something that every operator of critical infrastructure should be doing, every national defense system should be doing. Is just, that's a new normal. I mean, the Russian playbook is pretty straightforward. It's been there since the KGB was established after 1917 revolution. The methods have changed. The disinformation is faster, you know, with the online networks and all that.
Right.
But otherwise, I mean.
But also it's about how to educate and prepare your own people, your society, your families, your companies, because there can be as well different level of scenarios what we have, you know, practiced. So this is the huge exercise for not like on political and technical level only. It's about our people. And I think we are ready.
Thank you.
One shouldn't panic. It's calm,
Yeah.
carry on, steady on.
All
Just
right.
do your work.
I do want to just expand this a little bit. Just, you know, what is your current threat perception in the region, and are there any developments on that front? Can you just elaborate a little bit on any changes that you've seen in terms of the threat? You know, you did say that they have their playbook, but have they expanded in any areas? The Russians?
No, listen,
any
I mean, our intel agencies across NATO work very closely together through NATO, so both the civil intelligence, military intelligence, the counterterrorism and others. And very clearly there is a joint threat assessment, which is classified, so we are not going to talk about it, but there is a public side of NATO's sort of assessment, which is a strategic concept, where Russia is the most direct threat to Euro-Atlantic security and to allies' security. So it's pretty straightforward in that respect. So not only Russia had the capabilities that we all knew, but it also showed that actually it does have the intent to attack countries. So it's enabled by China. It has bilateral agreements on mutual defense with North Korea. It has mutual support agreement with Iran. It has all types of other enabling actors across the world, and we just have to be very clear that Russia is this center of the hub of the spokes of the wheel, holding it all together. So weakening Russia is the best security guarantee for all of us. Taking the threat seriously is what we need to do, whether the US or the Baltics or anybody else, and that's what we do.
Yeah, just to add a bit that we see the intensified operations by Russia's intelligence services in Baltics and also in continental Europe. And the recent developments were that they started operations not only in the informational field with disinformation operations or cyber operations, but also the kinetic operations, meaning that Russia's intelligence services recruit the agents for different disruption and sabotage operations. That was something new that we haven't seen. They think that operationally, for them it's easy to achieve the results in bringing the panic and the mistrust in the governments and in law enforcement, bringing the problems into our own countries, and through this also disseminating disinformation and saying that that's the price what we are paying for supporting Ukraine, and in purpose to just lower the public support for it. They think that it is effective and that we are not resisting enough and we are not responding enough. So that's another message, that we have to be resolute on it and to push them back, because otherwise they will continue to escalate in our land. And that will be one of the topics also within the NATO in upcoming NATO summit.
Just we need to see as well the wider picture about dynamics in our region. So when I was a defense minister of Estonia 2016, 17, what we saw the other side of the Russian border was like approximately 120,000 troops ready to go within 48 hours. But what we see now is that these troops are not literally existing. They have sent to Ukraine and mainly they're dead. So that's why we are saying as well that Ukraine is not only fighting for us, but they are fighting instead of us. So that is the understanding. But also we know that Russia has a plan, has also the will to restore these kind of capabilities in our region. But we have been investing heavily. We all will do, and also Poland, 5% of GDP, and it's a reality. It's not just the talks. So to invest our defense. Also, we're pushing heavily European Union to start funding defense from the European Union budget, which is a historical decision. I hope that it will come this year when we're discussing the next year's budget strategy, but this is a very big thing as well. And what can we say is that I think that you agree as well that we are more protected military than ever before. We have US troops on the ground. We have all the allies in our Baltic region, also Poland, ready to go. We have new NATO defense plans, which were adopted in Vilnius summit just 2 years ago, and less 2 years ago, which has a different approach totally, in the meaning not giving away any hinge of NATO territory, but it needs as well a new way of investments for the capabilities. So if you put all this together, so we are in a good track. But also, of course, Russia is an aggressive country, and we will remain that as well. And that's the reason that we are talking about as well our regional security architecture. We have Finland and also Sweden in NATO. This is a totally different thing in our region. Baltic Sea is the NATO lake, and this is totally different as well on the strategic position. But we still need to focus on Ukraine, because the future solution and the future architecture will be built there. And also we are in the position that actually the best security guarantee for our region is actually for Ukraine, and also for us is a full membership of NATO. So it's a long-term thing maybe. We cannot take it down from the table. But you can of course imagine, if you're living in the region, you have 1 million troops, well experienced in victorious ways, with full capabilities of defense productions in the region, as Ukraine is. And they can provide security as well, not only asking, and they are not only asking our support, actually. So this is like the geopolitical momentum for Europe.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts about the likelihood that the current U.S. administration will look to shrink the U.S. military presence in Europe? That was just occurring as the current president was leaving office before. Obviously, that changed dramatically. It has ebbed and flowed, but what are your thoughts about that? And then on top of that, there are top acting policy officials in the DoD that have argued that the U.S. needs to pull any forces it has dedicated to NATO war plans that could also be useful in a war in Taiwan, and ship them to the Indo-Pacific. Have you heard anything to this tune? And do you expect the U.S. to divest itself from NATO war plans? And is Europe capable of defending itself without U.S. leadership? So a lot of questions there.
Strong U.S. leadership in NATO is what is needed at these times or any other times. And obviously, remember end of 21, beginning of 22, when Putin submitted his sort of European security architecture proposal, which was about moving NATO back to its 97 borders and getting U.S. Basically out of NATO, Ukraine being controlled de facto by Russia. So it's not going to happen. I mean, U.S., like any other country, needs allies, and needs friends, and this is where we are, whether that's on trade, whether that's on supply chains, whether that's on military engagements. And what NATO's new military strategy provides, which was accepted in 2019 and which is being implemented throughout, is actually the bigger size of the military force in NATO, which is the troops have been contributed, have been placed under secure, with a higher readiness, ability to move, which means that there are troops that don't participate in regular exercises, but they are ready to go as necessary. So there are higher numbers of those. There's different type of exercising. The secure, the Supreme Allied Commander, American General Cavoli, has additional authorities to act as necessary. So there's a whole spectrum of of decisions, capabilities, numbers, and so on and so forth that have been decided and that are being implemented. So that is where we are. So we don't see any indication that the U.S. would change its position. If anything, it's the opposite.
Any other
But
points?
if I may, that what is obvious is, and also not because President Trump was re-elected or new the second term, that we need to balance more the investments to defense in NATO. So Europe must do more. And this is one thing that, as Free Baltic States, we don't need to change anything from our, policies, because we have said it before many times. And also the understanding that Russia will remain an aggressive country is there in Europe. So what we see is that Europe will invest more, and the spendings will be more balanced. But I cannot see as well, and I don't see this kind of willingness that the U.S. is somehow like going out from Europe or not taking the lead as a NATO leading country. So because this transatlantic bond is really, really important for U.S. and for Europe, but not only on military level, but as well economically. I think that these two continents are connected to each other more than ever before. So, and we have China actually, which is competing with us in a meaning. So we need to focus together about China, about some other evil countries, about North Korea, which is fighting in the middle of Europe. It's a fact. As well, Iran. So these are the geopolitical challenges.
Just to add a bit, the very approach that is also understandable to US is that when we agreed, and it's based on many assumptions, and what we see what is happening in Russia, that Russia is a long-term direct military threat to NATO. When we agreed on that, we decided that we need the reliable deterrence. For the deterrence, we need the good plans, operational plans, how we will fight Russian forces, and for that, what actions has to be done. So we NATO wrote the operational plans. We agreed on those. And then we decided that now we have to see whether our capabilities are there or not. And the answer was they are not there because of the many reasons and because of what they already mentioned on the investment. So now, when Europe is reviewing what they are spending, increasing the spending, now we have to agree on the timeline when the Europe will be more and more capable of defending and deterring itself. Till we reach that point, we will rely on US forces. We will rely on US and extended nuclear deterrence for a longer time, but conventional forces we will rely on. If there will be the gaps left, if the deterrence will not be the ones that would assure Russia that we can react in the manner that we described, they will test us, and we will have the more problems than we're having right now. So in a timeline, we can talk about it. If there will be no commitment from US, but we are not talking about this scenario, there will be the vulnerabilities that will Russia exploit.
Okay. Are you hearing any rumors about the Taiwan issue, or have you not heard anything to that tune?
I can't comment rumors.
Yeah, but of course we're talking about China and about our support to China's policy. And from Lithuania side, I can say that we are very in strong support of de-risking and decoupling in some of the sections. Because especially for the smaller countries to have vulnerabilities in the trade, that's the problem in itself, because China will exploit it for the political purposes. That happened to us only from Russia and China, actually, in our history. So we are in a position to support. Of course, we understand the interconnection between the Euro-Atlantic security and Indo-Pacific security. And with the Northern Korean troops already in aggression against Ukraine, so it already made the war in Ukraine the global conflict. So we see it as also our responsibility to support different contingencies that can happen in Indo-Pacific.
Okay. There's been an uptick in undersea cables being cut, and many believe the incidents are sabotage from Russia and even China. NATO is enhancing its presence in the Baltic Sea to try to secure the waters, including offering better protection of undersea cables. But what challenges exist in securing these lines? And there's the added wrinkle that many of these stretch through international waters, creating kind of a gray area for NATO response if the sabotage does occur. So if you could talk a little bit about how you are grappling with this particular issue right now, and what ideas you might have on information sharing, between private cable pipeline owners and NATO to work together on this issue.
We have improved a lot because we have had pretty many cases, I can call. I don't want to say like incidents or the hybrid attacks, but real cases, which are strategical for us and existential as well within the last couple of years. So we have tremendously increased our capabilities about the change of information between the governments and also the NATO participation. But also it is very important the share of information transatlantic ways. So one thing. The second is actually, you mentioned exactly the territorial waters and so on. So we need to overview the existing maritime law and United Nations agreements in the meaning that how we are actually implementing them. Because we are talking about the national security issues. We're talking about the existential cables, undersea connectivities, which is a global interest as well. So, and now we're witnessing that maybe these rules are based from the peacetime, where the free sea right was really there. But I think that we have lots of opportunities. How can we deal with that? You can imagine that the Gulf of Finland, which is between Estonia and Finland, where Russia has a right, to navigate. We see more than 500 ships, big ships, per week crossing it. And the territorial waters are so close that there is a narrow channel, 6 nautical miles. And everything is happening there. And it's about the shadow fleet question. It's about the security. It's about actually insurance questions. It's about as well environmental questions, because you can imagine if one tanker, which are not normally in a very good shape, whatever happens there. So, and from that angle, we can find more ways using even existing conventions to check the situation more. And Nordic-Baltic cooperation is really crucial right now, what we see.
Also, to the undersea cables, the testing and sort of constant understanding how do you ensure spare capacity if something happens is crucially important.
Okay.
And that concerns electricity cables that Estonia and Finland has, or via Lithuania to Sweden, or the data cables that we had. So we have to have constant alternatives tested. And that's what we do. So that's one sort of crisis preparation scenario. Second part is obviously for intel agencies to cooperate in a very proactive way to share with private companies the data, the risk profiles of particular ships, the sort of ability to see if there is a sort of possible challenge coming, will ease the work for our maritime colleagues and navies. So that's the second part, this sort of deterrence, because we know where the cables are. And in the Baltic Sea, it may be even easier than in some other areas. Sure. The transatlantic cables are impossible, to in that respect, to treat the same way. Baltic Sea is pretty small sea, pretty shallow sea. So then, of course, you have the need to act very fast. So when you have those two elements, then the need to act very fast, which we have done in these last 2 cases. So in both cases, the perpetrators were detained basically immediately.
Okay.
And that gives you that opportunity. The challenge comes if there is a perpetrator which doesn't cooperate. And that's if it's in international waters, it's the flags of convenience in certain cases, or the flags of ships that have been sanctioned, the shadow fleet ships. So this is where sort of more difficult areas arise, and for those we will need to figure out a certain way how to approach it. That's where the additional requests for insurance come in, which we have introduced. Closer checks of the maritime agencies where it's possible, whether that's in Danish Straits or other places. So there is a possibility. But daily, Baltic Sea is crossed by about 2,000 different ships, and clearly we cannot attach a Navy ship to each one of them. So it's about really being ready for crisis scenarios, but also making sure that you have the right risk profiles, that you have the right deterrence capacity and ability to act. So working very closely with both sides of the Baltic Sea, with the neighbors. You know, we were working with Margus that Sunday last till about 1 o'clock at night to coordinate actions and to make sure that, you know, everything the same with the Swedes and the others. So it's you know, lots of work for law enforcement agencies because, again, in our case, it was a criminal investigation because it's a cable is a property that was damaged. So that was a criminal investigation. So you work between the criminal investigators of various countries, which is, again, you know, you require safe signature, how to, you know, recognize each other's digital signatures. So there is lots of layers in all that, which in our case works because we are so like-minded, so similar, and so sort of in it together that it actually was a good test case and it has worked.
Okay. Anything to add? Or?
Yeah, just to add a bit on the features of the Baltic Sea that we are talking about and what are the difference between the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean is that it's really shallow. So all our infrastructure is like 300 feet depth on the seabed. So you can reach it with your anchor. So that is one difference. Another difference is hugely intensive traffic. And now of the shadow fleet, that lack of insurance, that the crew, lack of also expertise, and that's a huge problem in itself. And the third feature is that it's not only communications. So US has communications cables going to one direction or another, transatlantic, 19th century. In our case, that's energy. That's energy cables going to Finland, Sweden, and that's also gas pipeline. The one that was damaged in 23, Estonia and Finland. So for us, it's also energy security. We're more sensitive in this way. And there are all the other aspects that we have to solve. Legal is one of those. Because now the Convention on Law of the Sea is the global one. To change that one is long distance, and we need solutions right now. So that's what we are working. And another moment is that's not only about the shadow fleet. Shadow fleet is something that we can see. That's also about the Russia's capabilities that we developed in decades to surveil and also disrupt our communications in the case of the crisis of war. So we can be sure that they will try to hit all those cables that are in the Atlantic in the case there is some crisis. They invest a lot into it. Yes,
absolutely. I want to switch gears just a little bit because I know we're getting short on time here, but I've had a few questions come into to this tune. But you know, what has the impact been to the Baltic states so far on Elon Musk's takeover of USAID and stopping all program funding abroad? You know, what could be the result of the end of any assistance from USAID? Have you had any discussions with your counterparts on this matter at all while you've been visiting today or arrived yesterday?
We have had, but it's you know, this review is a really logical thing. You know, what we expect is that that review will be as quick as possible. There are many projects which are very you know, rapidly useful as well. If we're talking about Ukraine, about energy and many other things, and as well there are many projects we are co-funding, you know, because we need as well clarity for the future. So, but we are talking about just a couple of days approach, and you know, let's see.
Yeah, similar. You know, there's a right to review various programs for every country, so that's what's happening. We do hope for, you know, a quick restoration of sort of joint projects that we have with regard to rehabilitation of Ukrainian soldiers or psycho-emotional help to women who have been raped and others. So there's quite a bit that we are doing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a huge instrument of US that you have all the support. That's the instrument of soft power that makes US the global power. So of course we are very hopeful that after review you will put it back as if you will leave the spaces, and we are talking about the spaces that are in the south of Russian border and elsewhere, where we have the weak regimes, weak democracies, where you need more freedom. It will be filled in by by Russia's programs. So U.S. has to be there present, and also with these.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about, how the Trump administration has in the past said, we want to see Europe do more, and of course you all agree, yes, you can all do more, we can all do more. And one of the things we've heard Trump say many times is just wanting to bump up the NATO contribution for defense spending to 5% of your GDP. So you mentioned that you will reach 5%, or you are reaching 5%. But if you
we
could
have
talk a
all
little bit about
committed
that.
to do that. So working through the notions, it's not easy. I mean,
Right.
nobody should think it's sort of something that just happens by that. You know, not only you need the GDP to have that percentage of GDP, preferably growing GDP. You also need to identify where you get the growing GDP for the percentages for defense, whether you take additional loans, whether you raise tax, whether you redistribute government expenses. So it all takes time, it all costs money, and it's not easy. So I'm not saying that it's just some type of miracles that we are performing. It's hard political decisions. But there's a will to do that. The NATO summit in The Hague, this 24-25 June, is important, not only, as we discussed with regard to the probable commitment to higher defense spending across the alliance. And again, it's not because it's abstract percentage, it's for concrete capabilities that we need to defend the alliance. So it's to close those gaps that we all know exist. And there's also Russia constrainment strategies that we are all working on. There is the threats from other parts, and there is the challenges of China that we are working on. So there's a variety of different aspects. How to use the emerging technologies to the best of our military advantage that we have as NATO. Changes to procurement. There's a whole set basically of work that is being done, so it's very good.
That the GDP is an honest figure. GDP measures the pressure to your economy and society. So we all have pensioners, and we have students and children, and we have disabled people, social systems, so we all have them. We put all more than 3%. Estonia is putting this year like 3.7, something like this. Poland is doing 4.7 this year already and increasing as well. So we do it because we know that we don't want to live without freedom. And we all remember how it was. And the cost was really high. So, and we do hope as well that some other countries as well in Europe understand that it's much more cheaper to invest to your defense capabilities right now than later. Later you have no opportunities. So, and it is not only because of the Trump administration, because we know the new plans, what we adopted, we know the gaps, we know exactly how much we need to pay for that. And also in The Hague, the NATO summit, what will come this summer, I do hope that there will be an agreement, at least like 3.5% for all the allies. Because this is a need we need to invest. So. And everybody needs to understand. I don't buy this argument that we have too tight budget or we have other spendings. We have the same thing. So we introduced, as Estonia, from the 1st of January, new defense tax. Everybody pays, since birth to death. The pensioners, everybody pays more. And this is an agreement in the society. So.
And you need to mobilize the elites of the country, and in Lithuania's case, what worked very well, and that is one of the recipes that can be also repeated elsewhere. That was the initiative by business, by big business. They tasked one of the think tanks for the wargaming, actually American one, and that they did the different wargamings with the different status and condition of the Lithuanian armed forces. So, and they looked into the strength that would be needed to stop the Russians' offensive for at least 10 days for the reinforcement to come to Lithuania. And they said that, look, we need the strong division in the land forces, and then together with Americans and with Germans that are already deployed in Lithuania, we can do it for 10 days. And it was like a huge signal for all the businesses and other elites that, okay, how much we have to spend? That was around 30 billion till 2030. And that, how much it is, then the question was, so how much it is, in percentage, how big that sum is. Okay, it's 5 to 6% of GDP. And then it was an agreement. Okay, let's do it. We can make it. That's not something, that we are creating, but don't know what the end state will be. We know what the end state will be. And that's the big message. And that was actually the pathway that Poland went also, with their broad agreement that they need to spend more. So this is also to do for the others.
Okay. We have a lot of questions coming in on Ukraine.
I guess that's a good sign.
And what your thoughts are related to Ukraine. I know we have about 5 minutes left. Do you expect the U.S. to present a peace plan for Ukraine at the Munich Security Conference in 2 weeks? And just deeper into the future, what do you believe will be, I know this is very difficult to answer, the outcome of this Russian invasion in Ukraine?
We don't know whether will be the presentation of peace plan, but we definitely know that the only person who can end this aggression within a couple of hours is actually President Putin. So that's an obvious thing. So, but he doesn't want to change his code. So, and we have a brilliant preconditions, actually, what we need to do all together to push Putin to the corner. It's about the energy sanctions, it's about seizing the frozen assets, it's about putting the highest pressure to Putin before the negotiations starting. So, and we have all these opportunities there. The second thing is that there cannot be the peace without Ukraine, and also there cannot be the peace in Europe without Europe. And we are asking as well, what can we do more? Because we have these opportunities. And finally, we need to act all together and to give as well the working security guarantees. We don't need, nobody needs, and US as well doesn't need the Minsk agreement again, what we had like 2015, or any kind of like ceasefire, because Putin has like the personal legacy. He doesn't care about Russian people, about Russian economy, no. And the legacy is about restoration of Soviet influence and Soviet empire, and also kicking out the US interest from Europe and our region. So this is there. It's a public plan. So we need to break it. So we are somewhere in the year, as I said, as well, 1938. Let's use this opportunity. And this is our message as well.
I think NATO intel agencies are quite united in their assessment that currently there is not a single indicator that would show that Russia is geared towards peace.
Yeah.
So the policy is war. All the instruments of power is oriented towards war. The political powers, the economy, the military, the media, religion, everything is about war. So to get to peace, Russia needs to be pushed to peace. It needs to be forced into peace. And for that, as Margus said, it's actually very clear decisions that we all need to do before really having a long and just peace, which is stronger sanctions, denying Russia money, denying Russia technology, denying international support networks. And that will degrade Russia's military capacity to fight the war. And then I think the peace is visible and possible.
I guess we need sustainable peace. We need something to last longer than the couple of years that they will return, or half a year that it was between the Minsk I and Minsk II agreement, because Russians won't implement what they signed, because it never happened before. So we need at least one precedent where they implemented something that they said that they will. So this time we need the strong guarantees also for the peace. And we are not only sitting and watching what will happen. We have agency here, because the result will depend on us also in what we are doing, how much we are supporting Ukraine, and we do. And that's a long year commitment for us. That's not only till the peace will be agreed. That's for 10 years from the Baltic countries, or at least from Lithuania, with what we are doing. So bring strength to Ukraine, weaken Russia's sources of the war machine, and we will stop the aggression, and that would be the results that we expect.
All right. Well, We are out of time. So let me take a moment to thank the Headliners team leader, myself, as well as Cecily Scott Martin. Somebody else wrote the outro.
Thank you so much.
And our club executive director, Didier Sauji. And finally, thank you to the audience. We hope you will join us on February 21st when we host a conversation with DC Mayor Muriel Bowser about the future of the city. And now it is my honor to present our guests with the coveted National Press Club mug. I think you were drinking out of yours. You were drinking out of yours,
Yeah,
so we'll
very
pass
good.
this
Thank
one
you.
down.
Yes.
And thank you so much for
Sorry.
joining us
I
today.
was
And
taking
we
the
wish you the
good
best of luck with the rest of your conversations you're having here in DC.
Thank you so much.
And safe
Thank you,
travels
everyone.
home.
Yeah. Thanks.